It all started with a single sound. My friend Ethan swore he heard it late at night, a faint, distant voice echoing through his house. At first, he thought it was a dream. You know that feeling when you're halfway between awake and asleep? But when it happened the second night, it wasn't a dream. He was awake, staring at the ceiling, and the sound was there, a low, distorted voice coming from the hallway. Ethan lived alone. At first, he convinced himself it was nothing, a draft, maybe the pipes, but as the nights went on, the voice grew louder. It wasn't just one voice anymore. There were whispers, soft and indistinct at first, but they became clearer. He said it was like someone was calling his name, but not quite. It was off, like the echoes didn't belong to him. And then, on the fifth night, he told me something that sent a chill down my spine. He said the voice was coming from the walls.
Perhaps that someone is watching. It's you.
Hello?
Yes, it's Vanished Echoes, the home of mystery videos.
Ethan told me he tried to ignore it, but you can only push something like that aside for so long. One night, as he was lying in bed, the voice came again. Except this time, it was clearer. The tone wasn't distorted anymore. It sounded like a woman, murmuring something he couldn't quite make out. Ethan decided he needed to know where it was coming from. He got up, grabbed his phone for light, and walked toward the hallway. The air felt heavy. He said it was like the house was holding its breath, waiting for him to do something. He pressed his ear to the wall. And that's when he realized, the voice wasn't inside the house. It was behind the wall. He followed it, tracing the sound through the narrow hallway and down to the living room. The closer he got, the louder it became, until it wasn't just a murmur anymore, it was words. A sentence, repeated over and over again. "Let me out, let me out, let me out." Ethan said the voice was frantic, desperate, like someone was trapped behind the dry wall. He panicked and did the only thing he could think of. He grabbed a hammer from the tool closet and started breaking through the wall. But as he swung the hammer, the voice stopped. Silence. When he broke through the wall, there was nothing there. No wires, no speaker, no sign that anyone had been there at all. Just empty, hollow space. That should have been the end of it. But it wasn't. Because now, the whispers started following him. After that night, Ethan said he couldn't sleep. Every time he closed his eyes, he swore he could feel something watching him, waiting. The whispers didn't stay in the walls anymore. They were in the corners of the room, in the back of his closet, sometimes even right behind him when he was brushing his teeth. "It's like they're getting closer," he told me over the phone. His voice sounded ragged, like he hadn't slept in days. "I don't know what they want, but they won't stop." I tried to calm him down, told him it was probably stress or exhaustion. But deep down, I didn't believe that. Something about the way he spoke, it wasn't just fear. It was resignation, like he already knew something was coming for him. A few nights later, he called me in the middle of the night. It was 2:43 a.m., and I'll never forget the way he sounded. "I need you to come over," he said. "Please, just come over." I didn't hesitate. I got in my car and drove straight to his place. The second I pulled into his driveway, I knew something was wrong. Every light in the house was on, but the curtains were drawn tight, like he was trying to block something out. When I knocked on the door, there was no answer. I tried calling him, no response. Finally, I used the spare key he'd given me a few years ago and let myself in. The house was silent. Not just quiet, silent, like the air itself was holding still. I found Ethan in the living room, sitting on the floor, facing the wall he had broken through days earlier. He didn't turn to look at me when I called his name. He just sat there, rocking slightly, his phone in his hand. When I got closer, I realized he wasn't just holding his phone, he was recording. I stepped closer and called his name again, louder this time. He didn't respond. His eyes were locked on the wall, and his lips were moving, muttering something under his breath. I leaned in to hear him, and I realized he was repeating the same phrase over and over again. "It's in the recording. It's in the recording. It's in the recording." I gently reached for his phone. He didn't resist. The screen was still recording, but I paused it and pressed play. At first, there was nothing. Just the sound of Ethan breathing. Then, faintly, I heard it, whispers. It was hard to make out at first, but then the voices grew clearer, sharper, louder. They weren't coming from the phone's microphone. They were speaking directly to me. They were saying my name. I dropped the phone. It hit the floor with a dull thud, and the whispers stopped. But Ethan? He didn't react. He just kept rocking back and forth, staring at the wall. That's when I noticed something new. The wall wasn't the same anymore. It was smooth again, like the hole Ethan had made had never existed. And right in the middle of it, in a shade of gray that didn't match the rest of the paint, was a handprint. It wasn't human. I don't know what I saw that night, but I know one thing: I left. I didn't ask questions, didn't try to help Ethan, I just ran. And I never saw him again. The next day, his house was empty. No furniture. No sign he'd ever lived there. It's like he vanished into thin air. Sometimes, late at night, I think I hear something, like a faint whisper in the distance. When I do, I never go looking for it. Because if there's one thing I've learned, some echoes are better left unheard.